Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Week 5 lecture. For this week, we're going to focus on another school of thought that is somewhat closely related to human relations theory, and that's what we usually refer to as modern human resource theories. Modern human resource theories, again, share some similarities with human relations theories, but there are some stark differences between the two. Remember, with human relations theories, one of the major criticisms is that it was still a top-down type of arrangement, in that leaders were taking into account the wants, needs, and desires of their employees, but primarily for the purpose of motivating their employees to give back to organizational goals. With modern human resource management theory, now we are actually placing a value on our employees and placing a value upon the achievement of the goals of those individual employees. So now it's not just about the organization's goals, but now it also becomes about the goals of the employees, to help employees develop their skills and to develop as human resources to benefit the individual employee. So it is okay if we help an employee develop as a human resource and then eventually that employee leaves the organization. That doesn't necessarily benefit the organization in the long run, but it benefits the employee. And that's acceptable under modern human resource management theory. So to take an old John F. Kennedy phrase, under human relations theory, we were asking, what can the individual do for the organization? In modern human resource management theory, we're asking the question, what can the organization do for the individual to help the individual be all that they can be, and to, as Abraham Maslow would say, self-actualize. So you have several authors that are within this modern human resource management school, but just to keep this video as brief as possible, I thought we would pull out three of the main authors and just talk a bit about three of those authors. The first author we'll talk about is Abraham Maslow. And I'm fairly confident you probably run into Abraham Maslow before. If you had any psychology courses undergrad, I'm sure you've talked about Maslow and his very famous hierarchy of needs. As you see on the screen, you've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the 5 different levels of needs in this hierarchical triangle. At the bottom are what he calls physiological needs, things like food, water, warmth, rest. Next level up are safety needs, a feeling of security and safety. Next level up, needs for belongingness and love, intimate relationships and friends. Next level up, esteem needs, the need to feel prestige and a feeling of accomplishment and that others respect you and hold you in high levels of esteem. And at the apex of the hierarchy of needs, you have self-actualization. Self-actualization is essentially being all that you can be, achieving your full potential, including creative activities. So he presents to us this hierarchy of needs with 5 different levels of needs. At the bottom, physiological and safety needs are what he considers to be the basic needs. The 2 middle needs are psychological needs, esteem, and the need for belonging. And then the top need is what he calls the self-fulfillment need. Now, the bottom 4 needs, your basic needs and your psychological needs, are also referred to as deficiency motivated needs, in that people are motivated by a deficiency in these need levels. And so, for instance, if someone doesn't have enough food, they are motivated to acquire more food, and they are motivated to try and fulfill that deficiency in the amount of food that they have to consume. Once they have gotten enough food and they are no longer hungry and no longer feel they need food, then that deficiency has been resolved, and that then ceases to be a motivator. So at the bottom 4 levels, people are motivated to try and fulfill a deficiency in those need categories. So those are referred to as deficiency-oriented needs. The top need, self-actualization, is considered to be a growth need, because people are not motivated by a deficiency with self-actualization, but rather they're motivated to continue to grow. So with self-actualization, a growth need, this doesn't end. People are always being motivated to try and grow, to self-actualize, and to be all that they can be. Now, a couple of things here. One thing to remember is that this hierarchy of needs is typically how Abraham Maslow is presented. But later on in life, Maslow actually made modifications to this hierarchy of needs. And one of the last things that he did in his academic career is he changed that self-actualization need. And instead of it being achieving one's full potential, he transformed it into giving back to society. And how does someone leave society? And how are they leaving society better off than how they found society? So it was a little bit more of a magnanimous type of looking at how the individual affects society, as opposed to just trying to achieve one's own self-actualization. So it's important to note that he did kind of modify that a little bit later on in life. The second important thing to realize with this hierarchy of needs is that its utility for us in this discussion is that it tells us that everyone has a different hierarchy of needs. So it's incumbent upon leaders and managers to know their employees and know their employees' unique hierarchy of needs, and then appeal to that hierarchy of needs to help people develop their skills and to develop as human resources. So the organization can try and help its employees self-actualize, to help those employees be all that they can be, and to engage in this continuous personal growth. So you can see that's very far afield from where we were in classic School of Organization theory. Now we're valuing our employees. Now we are saying it's incumbent upon leaders to know their employees and know the differing hierarchy of needs for all the different employees that you interface with on a daily basis. One of the students of Abraham Maslow is this gentleman known as Douglas McGregor. And Douglas McGregor is well known for his famous work, The Human Side of the Enterprise. McGregor built on Maslow's hierarchy of needs and basically created for us two different theories. And again, he wasn't terribly creative in how he named these theories, but he created for us this dichotomy of theory X versus theory Y. Theory X viewed individual employees in a very poor light. It viewed individual employees as being lazy, as being not very motivated, not very creative or innovative, that you really had to push them to get them to work. That was theory X. So it's kind of like, if you remember back to Frederick Taylor and his idea of soldiering, it's a lot like the way Frederick Taylor kind of viewed employees. So the theory X view of employees is a very negative view of employees. The opposite of that is theory Y. In McGregor's theory Y approach, it's a complete opposite. Instead of being lazy, they are motivated. Instead of being unintelligent, they are intelligent. They are creative. They are innovative. They seek out responsibility and accountability. So it's complete opposite of theory X. Well, so what? The so what is that McGregor argues that the majority of our employees tend to be theory Y-oriented employees, but they are working within theory X classical organizations. So we are basically shoehorning these innovative, motivated theory Y employees into a classic bureaucratic structure like a theory X organization. The problem with that, obviously, is if theory Y employees are working in a theory X organization, that's going to be a disincentive for them to work harder. It's going to be a disincentive for them to grow. It's just a mismatch between employee and organization. So McGregor argues to us that what we need to do in organization theory is find a way to transform our theory X organizations into theory Y organizations to make them match our theory Y employees. So how do we do that? One of the primary ways we do that is to borrow from Mary Parker Follett in her idea of self-determination. To have organizations allow employees to self-determine, to determine what they're doing on a daily basis so that they can enrich their own jobs and then identify with the jobs that they are doing. So again, if someone wants to become a city manager one day, you allow that person to help develop their job description so that they can work in a variety of different departments, develop a variety of different skills. You want them to have the ability to manage budgets. You want them to have the ability to manage human resources. You want them to be able to engage in management analysis, in policy analysis, so they can build these skills that they will need eventually to aspire to that position of being a city manager. So we need to transform our Theory X organizations into Theory Y organizations, and we primarily do that through self-determination and through this process called job enrichment, where we allow people to enrich their own jobs so that their jobs can help them develop the skills they need to self-actualize and to grow. Then a student of Douglas McGregor is Chris Argyris. Chris Argyris took McGregor's Theory Y and Theory X dichotomy and built upon it. Chris Argyris is best known for his personality and personal growth theory. Argyris not only argues that people tend to be more Theory Y as compared to Theory X, but he goes beyond that and says that people become more Theory Y throughout their lives. That as people go through a maturation process, that maturation process will naturally make them more Theory Y in their orientation. That's what he refers to as their personal growth journey. So as people go through this personal growth journey, it is marked by things such as increasing activism. They become more active players in determining what they do on a daily basis and engaging in their own self-governance. As people go through this personal growth process, they also have increasing independence. They're no longer dependent upon parents or on managers or leaders. They become independent actors. They trust their own intuition. They trust their own abilities. They develop the ability to behave in multiple different ways. So they become a little bit more unpredictable because they've got all these different ways in which they can act. It's just not one way as they were when they were younger. Now they act in multiple ways. They develop deepening interests. They become much more connected to the world around them and much more connected to giving back to their community. They tend to have a longer time perspective. So they're not just concerned about what I do today and how that affects me tomorrow. They're concerned about how that affects me and my community 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road. They aspire to what we call superordinate positions. So they might be in a subordinate position now, but they aspire to be in a superordinate position in the future. They want to take on additional accountability and additional responsibility. And they develop self-awareness. They're more comfortable in their own skin and they're more aware of who they are as individuals. So basically, Argyris is telling us they not only start out Theory Y, but they become even more Theory Y as they go through this personal growth process. Again, the problem is if they're trying to go through this personal growth process housed within a Theory X organization, that Theory X organization is going to inhibit this personal growth process. So both McGregor and Argyris argue for us that it's incumbent upon our organizations to help our individual employees grow and to develop as human resources. Even if helping them grow and develop as human resources means that they may one day leave the organization, that's fine, because our ultimate goal is not just to achieve the goals of the organization, but to help our individual employees achieve their individual goals as well. So you can kind of see how the human resource management theory has really kind of corrected some of the perceived flaws with human relations theory, in that it's no longer exploitative. It's no longer just trying to induce people to contribute to the organization. Now it flips that around and asks, how can the organization help the individual grow and develop as a human resource? Human resource management, when it's compared to our models of organizational effectiveness, really does value at least 3 of our 4 different models. There's human relations going on there, internal process, and rational goal as well. In terms of our mechanisms for coordination and control, very clearly mutual adjustment, in that we are communicating with our employees. We're asking them what's important for them. We're asking them what their personal goals are, and then we're trying to structure their work to help them achieve those personal goals. When we structure their work to help them achieve those personal goals, that then motivates those employees through job identification. You enrich their jobs and help them contribute to enriching their jobs, and then they're more likely to closely identify with those jobs, which then serves as a motivator to motivate them not just to contribute to organizational goals, but also to help contribute to their individual goals as well. So it is a much more altruistic way of viewing our individual employees and dealing with our individual employees on a daily basis. So I think what you can do when you look at human resource management theory and compare it back to classical theory or compare it back to human relations theory, you can kind of see how far we have come in our development in the literature. Because now it's not just all about the micro level approach to looking at the organization, but now it's about the micro level approach as well. So the macro level approach looked at the organization. Now we're combining that with a micro level approach where we are concerned about the well-being of our individual employees as well. Okay, now that we have presented some highlights from those 3 main human resource management theorists, now let's turn our attention to how we're going to apply that information in the primary assignments for this week 5 of the class. So one assignment that you have for this week here in week 5 is a development of a literature review kind of / annotated bibliography. And maybe in some of your previous courses, you've done literature reviews and or annotated bibliographies. We're calling this assignment a literature review assignment, even though it more has the look and the feel of an annotated bibliography. And I'll describe that in just a second. So to get started with this assignment this week, you're asked to reflect on the concepts that are covered in this week's readings and think about how those concepts may impact the task force that you are proposing for your critical assignment. We are then asking you to locate one academic peer-reviewed journal article for each of the following topics, again, with an emphasis on that task force that you want to develop. So you're going to be pulling a total of 5 peer-reviewed journal articles. 1 peer-reviewed journal article on each of the following topics. Leadership, and you did some reading in Tompkins on Levin and Leiker and their leadership styles and democratic leadership versus autocratic leadership versus laissez-faire leadership. An article on needs and motivations, again, the Maslowian type of hierarchy of needs. An article on Theory X and Theory Y management from Douglas McGregor. An article on management by objectives, the Peter Drucker type of approach. And an article looking at Chris Ardress and the impact of organizations and structure on individual personal growth patterns. So 1 article for each of those 5 different topics. Tie those topics then and the article you're using to your task force that you are going to develop for your critical assignment. Again, you're going to strive to find recent articles written on the specific topics that utilize these types of theories. Step 3, review the 5 academic peer-reviewed journal articles that discuss the original author's work in more detail, addressing questions such as, how did the new article assess the original theory or use the work to build on their own ideas? How did they customize the concepts to your specific type of task force? How could they help in the development and operation of your task force? When you prepare this quote unquote literature review, you're again going to compare it more in the form of an annotated bibliography. So it's going to kind of look and feel like an annotated bibliography. So an APA title page, include the full reference for the article, and then for each of those articles, after you provide that full reference, then provide a brief summary in which you address the questions that were presented to you up there in step 3. How's the article assess the original theories? How do they customize the concepts to the specific type of task force that you want to create? How could it help in the development and operation of that task force? Again, it's not technically an annotated bibliography, but should have the same feeling and the same look as an annotated bib. So a title page, then you'll provide the full citation in APA format for your article, and then a very brief, maybe 1 paragraph or so description of the article that then addresses all of those questions in step 3. Then you move on to your second article, full APA citation for that article, and then your description, and then article 3 and 4 and 5, and you get the idea. So it's going to look like an annotated bibliography. Paper's worth 150 points, 75 points for locating academic peer-reviewed articles, citing theories covered in class that are specific to your proposed task force, 60 points for the content and insights, and then 15 points for proper APA formatting. So that's your literature review / annotated bibliography assignment. Then your second assignment for the week is another one of those journal entries. For this journal entry, you're going to be discussing Chris Argyris and his theory on personal growth. So in this journal entry, present your ideas on the following. From your point of view, present the pros and cons of Chris Argyris' theory of personal growth versus those from earlier theorists such as Taylor, Fayol, Weber, Gulick, etc. Provide some depth to all the theories that support your view, just not a vague opinion, but give some depth to your arguments that you are making. Do you believe Argyris' theory advanced the theory of Elton Mayo, or did Argyris kind of take this in a completely different direction? And provide your assessment of the changing management theories that were occurring in the mid-1900s. Your journal entry should be a minimum of 500 words, should demonstrate a deep reflection on the topics covered this week, must be free of spelling and grammatical errors in order to receive full credit. So those are your 2 assignments. You've got your 1 literature review / annotated bibliography for those 5 articles, and then a journal entry really getting into and exploring Chris Argyris and his personal growth theory. As always, any questions, feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, I hope you have an enjoyable week 5, and we'll be back at it with another video next week going through our material for week number 6. Thanks and have a great week.